Okay, hello everyone. My name is Dr. Mariam Nasir Tafrishi, and I am one of the co-chairs of APA Division 52, Human Rights, Peace, and Global Wellbeing. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar presentation on another important global issue, which this time is the mental health and well-being of the eldest daughters in Southeast and East Asian diaspora. I would like to welcome and thank our dear guest speakers, Dr. Patricia Perez, Sandy Lee, and Dr. Dianza Spalding for accepting our invitation to present on this topic today. Their presentation is unique in that they address this topic by drawing on their diverse scientific backgrounds from international psychology, trauma and developmental psychology, to mind-body medicine while sharing their personal experiences. I would also like to thank APA Division 52 Webinar Committee, our VP, Dr. McGrath, our other co-chair, Dr. Gulzar Ahmed, whom I work closely with, and our team members for their support. Before introducing our guest speakers, I would like to ask if everyone can mute themselves. Thank you. At the end of the presentation, you have time to ask your questions. You may enter your questions in the Q&A section, which is at the bottom of the Zoom screen. If you are not able to do that, you may enter your questions in the comment sections, and at the end, our speakers will be happy to answer them. And this presentation will take about an hour to hour and 10 minutes, including the Q&A section and closing statements by myself and Dr. Ahmed. And now it's time to introduce our dear speakers, starting with Sandy Lee. Sandy is a doctorate candidate in the Mind-Body Medicine program at Saybrook University. She's a national board certified health and wellness coach with a certification in mindfulness applications. She also serves as a program coordinator and volunteer facilitator at Achila Health. As a Chinese American eldest daughter, her academic interests encompass the lived experiences of eldest daughters, intergenerational trauma, and integrative and holistic ways of healing the mind, body, and spirit. Our next speaker is Dr. Patricia Perez, who's an adjunct faculty of Department of Psychology at Adler University, Chicago. For almost 30 years, she has taught undergraduate and graduate courses in child development and psychology. Some of her areas of research and practice expertise include mental health and well-being, Filipino psychology, Asian women and sexual violence, and human rights. Dr. Perez is an international psychologist, consultant, and speaker. Our third speaker is Dr. Dianza Spalding, who's a dissertation chair at the Chicago School in the International Psychology Department. Dr. Spalding's research focuses on the lived experience of immigrant women who were in domestic violent relationships. She founded and has directed Renew Therapy Seattle and consultation for 20 years. Dr. Spalding is a licensed trauma mental health therapist and works with marginalized communities with a special interest in intersectional oppression, intergenerational trauma, and neuropsychology. Please help me welcome our first speaker, Dr. Dianza.
Thank you, Dr. Tafreshi, for that beautiful, wonderful introduction. And welcome to our presentation today that is entitled The Mental Health and Well-Being of Eldest Daughters in the Southeast and East Asian Diaspora. As we get started, we just want to say that we are so grateful to be here, and we want to acknowledge those that have made this presentation possible. Thank you, Dr. Mariam Tafreshi, Dr. Gulzar Ahmad, and Dr. Brita McGrath. We also want to thank the APA Division 52, Society for Global Psychology, Human Rights, Peace, and Global Wellbeing Special Interest Group, which has made this possible today. We want to thank all of the eldest daughters in the world for making the world turn every single day, and our families. And we want to thank all of you for being here with us today. And we also want to acknowledge that all of us presenters are eldest daughters. And, as we were preparing for this presentation, we were talking about just how special it is that we get to speak from our personal experiences on this topic, and that this is kind of a rare conversation that is being had around the world. So we're really grateful to be able to present on this topic today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Dianza, for that warm welcome and introduction. So I invite everyone now, before we dive deeper into our presentation, to participate in a mindful moment. This is a tradition that we carry at Saybrook, where we just take some time before any video conferences or meetings to really mindfully breathe and drop into our bodies. This is really helpful, especially if we're coming from a previous meeting or any other responsibility or task. So this is a time to really get centered and grounded. So I invite all of you to get comfortable in your position, whether you be seated or standing. Make any adjustments that you need to. Listen to your body. And if it feels right for you, I invite you to flutter your eyes closed. Or if you would like to keep them open, you can keep them soft and gaze at the image right in front of you on the screen. All right. And what we're going to do together is do 3 collective breaths. You get to determine the intensity and also the pacing of your breath. There's no right or wrong here. So whenever you're ready, I invite you to take a generous inhale in, hold if you can, and exhale. And when you're ready for the second breath, breathing in, hold if you can, and breathing out. And for our last breath together, I invite you to inhale as much softness and ease into your body. Hold if you can, and to exhale any stress, tension, or hardness from your body. All right. So you may wiggle your fingers and toes if that feels right for you. Maybe shake up any lingering energy from your hands and feet. If your eyes were closed, you can slowly flutter them open. And if they were already open, you can refocus your gaze back onto the screen and to this virtual space that we have here together. Thank you so much for doing that with me. And this will now take us into our next slide, which is the agenda. So this is what we have outlined for our presentation today. Each of the speakers are going to dive into their introductions, basically our stories, and then we'll explore the rationale and then the context of eldest daughters. We do have a slide that specifically looks at eldest daughters from the mental health context, and then we will discuss mental health considerations and strategies and wrap up with next steps towards the end of the hour together.
Thank you so much, Sandy and Dr. Spalding, for your introductions. We are now moving also to, especially in this Division 52, Society for Global Psychology, anchored in the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So for this webinar, we have 3 that we have identified. So goal number 3, goal number 5, and our last goal.
Thank you. And this now takes us to our reflection exercise. And the 3 of us speakers wanted to pose these 2 questions for you. The first one is, where are you in your family's birth order? And then the second question is, what do you need to feel nourished in mind, body, and or spirit? You don't have to know the answer right now. This is something we invite you all to contemplate about maybe throughout the rest of this presentation or your day. If you feel really called to, you can also journal about this. And if you feel comfortable sharing as well, you can also drop it in the chat box. But this is something that we invite you all to really consider, especially in the context of eldest daughters.
Give a little minute, Sandy and Dr. Spalding, for them to reflect on these questions. Okay, so as we move forward to just geographically discuss where we are situated when we move forward, and you can also think about this where you are geographically. We are focusing on East Asia and Southeast Asia. So here is a visual and looking at the culture and the context and the countries of the six that comprise East Asia. So we're looking at Mongolia, China, Japan, North Korea, South Korea, and Taiwan. And then we also have the special administrative regions of China, which are Hong Kong and Macau. Moving forward to the 11 countries that comprise Southeast Asia, there is a visual. And this is also part of our presentation as we move forward with our topic. So these countries are, again, the cultures, context, and the countries of Cambodia, Indonesia, Laos, Timor-Leste, Malaysia, Myanmar, the Philippines, Singapore, Brunei, Thailand, and Vietnam.
Thank you, Dr. Perez. And I will kick us off now with telling each of our stories. For me, I identify as a Chinese and Vietnamese American cisgender woman. I did mainly grow up speaking Cantonese at home and eating mostly Chinese cuisine. So although I do identify as Chinese and Vietnamese, I align myself more with my Chinese American identity. I also self-identify as the eldest daughter in my family with a younger brother who is 2 years younger. There's a picture of us two as kids at the zoo in the second image on the right here. Now, growing up, I was raised with traditional cultural values at home. My first and foremost responsibility was to always look after my younger brother because I was the big sister. And then I was also expected to take care of all the domestic chores within the household. And eventually, I am expected to look after my parents, especially when they get older and can no longer take care of themselves. So these were the sets of expectations that I had within the household. Now, as I started maturing and then I could get enrolled in school and start applying for jobs, I found myself with a different set of expectations outside of the home now that aligned more with growing up in an American society. Not only was I expected to fulfill all of these traditional duties according to my culture, my parents expected me to academically and professionally succeed so that I could obtain a high-paying career to achieve financial stability for myself and for my family. Unsurprisingly, I had a lot of challenges with trying to balance these dual cultural expectations while growing up, especially with my parents. There were a lot of arguments and tears. I did experience some negative health outcomes in that I was diagnosed with mild depression, anxiety, and I also had perfectionistic tendencies because I wanted to work really hard to fulfill both of these different sets of expectations from my parents. Around this time, this is when I started noticing that the eldest daughter syndrome went viral on various social media platforms. And that's when it clicked for me that I thought, wow, I am not the only person to be going through this type of experience. When I started considering my dissertation topic, and then I looked to the literature to see what evidence was there on the eldest daughters, there weren't that many updated studies. That's when it finalized for me that I wanted to do my dissertation on the experience of eldest daughters. Personally, for me, my goal is to really bridge this gap within myself because I felt like I had a foot in two different worlds and I didn't know where I really belonged trying to navigate these different types of expectations. And I also wanted to bridge this growing chasm between my parents and I. I see them as the connection to my cultural heritage and I did not want to lose that, especially now that we're getting older. So that's why I'm here today doing this presentation and also for my dissertation topic. So with that, I pass it on to Dr. Perez.
Thank you so much, Sandy. So I'm going to show some pictures here, very similarly to Sandy, before I go into some of my bulleted points. So on the far left is me, probably talking back to my mother when I was 2 or 3 years old, prior to me leaving the Philippines, where I was born in Quezon City, to New York City. So that was my very first stop. In the middle is my last field experience to the Philippines with the International Psychology doctoral program at the Chicago School, where we were at, and it was around Christmas time. And then on the far right is myself with our 3 kids. So as we had mentioned, we are all eldest daughters. So that is definitely something that that is part of our similarities. Also, too, I am the eldest of three siblings. There's three girls and a boy, and so having girls, and my mother would always say that three is a lucky number. So there's three, and then the other gender. So she was very excited about that. I'm also a wife. I'm also a mother. And I also am a third culture kid and adult. And what is that? It is somebody who's lived prior to their adult years or prior to 18 years of age in away from their root or passport country. So I am a naturalized citizen to the United States. I actually have lived in 18 different addresses prior to my 18th birthday. So I've lived in 4 different states. I lived in London, England, and then I also lived in the Philippines. The reason why I'm here, and it's not only that I come from a human rights background and a human rights family and a political family in the Philippines, but very also similar to Sandy, that this topic means something to me in particular within the Filipinx context. And so it's really important for me to really think about what does it mean not only to be an eldest daughter, but what does it mean to be Filipino, Filipina, and Filipinx, really in the diaspora, as someone who has lived really outside of my own root country. I am also a developmentalist. Mental health and well-being in the global space as an international psychologist is something that is near and dear to my heart. As someone who had to be the eldest daughter to acculturate my parents and also my siblings to whatever environment that we lived in. And for the past 30 years, I've been teaching, mentoring, and guiding. So I'm going to move this on now to Dr. Spalding.
Thank you, Sandy and Dr. Perez, for your stories. Like Dr. Perez, I'll kind of go through these pictures that are on the far right of the screen. This first picture here on the top left is me at about 3 years old. And the picture right next to that one to the right is my adorable mama and me. As you can see, I was born in the 70s. You probably, infer that from the upholstery here on the sofa. And then here on the bottom, this picture here on the bottom is me and my family. This is my husband, Asajafo, my son, Sam, my daughter, Isabel, and myself. I identify as Filipino and Norwegian American, and I strongly identify with the Filipino side of myself because of my mother's influence in my life and that she raised me. And I have been, in the last several years, it has been a really important part of my story to trace back my immigration story. And so I've been just doing a lot of deep dives into that part of my identity, my story. My maternal grandfather immigrated from the Philippines to Hawaii in 1946, and he actually was drafted into the World War II shortly thereafter. And so that's where my mother was born and raised. My mom, like me, was the eldest daughter in her family and had a lot of responsibility to take care of her siblings. And even when they didn't have parents that were in the home any longer, my mom would take her youngest sibling, who was 2 years old at the time, to high school with her so that she can ensure that she graduated from high school as well as was able to take care of her siblings. So this kind of tradition of being the eldest daughter and having a lot of responsibility runs really deep in my family. As the eldest daughter, I have two younger brothers, and it was a huge emphasis in my family to be a good daughter, to take care of my mom, to take care of my brothers and things. But my mother also was diagnosed with lupus in her 20s. And so she had a lot of medical conditions that took her in and out of the home, which kind of raised that responsibility for me to show up as kind of a second mother to my brothers and kind of a surrogate wife in the home, taking care of things and making sure that people were getting fed and people were getting the things that they needed in the home. I also was raised in a Christian traditional home, which very much aligns with this tradition of eldest daughter because of gender norms and women being in the home and women taking care of the home and things, and the deep responsibility that women have to the home. And as much as those things have been the aspect, I didn't actually know that there was a name that there was an eldest daughter syndrome name to this until we started this presentation. I've always felt it. I've heard it in some of my clients that I've talked to around their identity and how they've navigated family dynamics like this. But as much as I've seen it a role and responsibility, and I've seen kind of the impacts of that can sometimes be burdensome, I also recognize that some of those roles and responsibilities have made it possible for me to navigate the world and to go and get my PhD and conduct the research that I've done and become a therapist, and I'm also a pastor and an organizer in the Seattle context. So I feel very grateful also for just the ability to learn from my mom and to be able to take on those responsibilities with my family as well. I've taken some of these lessons as well as my clinical background and research to develop a framework, a therapy framework called story healing that helps people to bridge that divide between their identity and these kinds of family dynamics.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Spalding. And this now takes us into the rationale, or basically why we are here today. While I was doing research for my literature review for my dissertation, I came across various statistics and findings that hinted that we needed to hold space to have this conversation about eldest daughters' experiences. UNICEF reported that girls between the ages of 5 and 14 did 160 million more hours of domestic chores than boys, possibly hinting at a gender inequality here. In a different study, first and second generation Asian American women were more likely to experience conflicts with their parents over gender-based cultural expectations. This same group is more likely to experience psychological distress, poor bonding with their parents, and problematic behaviors. And then in an earlier study, Osberger and colleagues found that Asian American women may be more likely to underuse mental health services. And this is something that we will dive deeper when we explore the mental health context, but some factors to consider may include generational, religious, or cultural stigma. And lastly, most recently in 2024, the eldest daughter syndrome went viral on TikTok with over 6 million views on its hashtag alone. All of these different results combined indicate that something is going on here and that maybe the eldest daughter syndrome is more common than we thought. So this now takes me to the next slide, where I look more at the eldest daughter's context through my literature review and my study. And these are some of the findings that I pulled from my research. I first considered the historical influences of Confucianism in East Asian cultures and the American dream from Western perspective. So Confucius was a renowned philosopher who is from ancient China and had a lot of different ideologies that really shaped individual morals, family ethics, and education. The American dream, on the other hand, was developed by James Truslow Adams, who basically said that as long as one tries hard enough and really perseveres, they too can achieve success regardless of their background. So now we have the historical context, and that it may have shaped the spectrum of collectivism to individualism. In many East Asian cultures, there tends to be more of a collectivistic orientation where the group is prioritized over the self. And then in many Western cultures, there tends to be more of an individualistic orientation where the self is prioritized over the group. These several different factors may have influenced the development of the family structure. So in many East Asian cultures, families tend to be a little bit more hierarchical in that the eldest sits at the top with the most authority and privileges, and everyone who is younger must obey the eldest. In Western cultures, I discovered a little bit of a different structure, and that tends to be a little bit more reciprocal, and that children are placed at the center, and then the parents are seen as supporting characters to them. Now, when I brought birth order into my research, there tends to be some similarities between the Eastern and the Western side, in that eldest siblings are still seen as the family representatives, the caretakers, the role models for youngest siblings to follow. But then when gender now gets added into the dynamic, things are a little bit different here. Traditionally, eldest daughters are expected to take care of all the domestic duties within the household and obey male figures, such as their husbands, their brothers, or their eldest sons or their fathers. But now within modern times, not only are eldest daughters still expected to complete those traditional duties, they are now being expected to, again, succeed academically and professionally outside of the home. This places eldest daughters in this third hybrid space where they're trying to navigate, like, which one do I honor more? I have two different conflicting sets of expectations here. And this raises the question of, where is their voice in all of this? And what is the impact of this on their experience as an eldest daughter?
I wanted to add something, Sandy. I don't know, Dr. Spalding, if you have anything, but it just reminded me when you were talking about the hierarchical versus reciprocal, the whole idea of language. So like in Tagalog, right? In there's many dialects of Tagalog, but in one of our national languages in the Philippines, we have words that denote the hierarchy and also denotes the relationship. So for example, the word for older sister is ate. So that, right, we have, we do have words for younger, sort of, but we don't really have words for when it comes to birth order, like middle necessarily. It's always the patriarchy or the eldest, like the eldest brother is kuya, lolo and lola for grandparents, tito and tita for aunt and uncle. That signals not only how you're supposed to reciprocate in the order of the family or your relationship to the bloodline or not the bloodline, but how you should function in that role. Dr. Spalding, I don't know, do you have the same thoughts? Because I saw you shaking your head.
Absolutely agree. I think also some of the language like ate is a way of honoring and acknowledging that hierarchy in a kind of honoring kind of way. Like you look up to that person who's your ate.
Yes. All right.
Well, we think it's really important for us to understand the mental health context for eldest daughters. And based on our research and our experience, these are some of the things that we can typically see. So for eldest daughters, they internalize very deeply into their psyche, into their body, into their spirit, these roles and responsibilities that they have to their family. And as such, that can lead to confusion around their identity and around maybe some of their own kind of individual goals, hopes, desires, or dreams. And especially in a more collectivist context, individuality isn't a high value in a collectivist family or collectivist context. Eldest daughters are also deeply emotionally connected to their family unit. It's part of the ways that those roles and responsibilities show up for them. And so when they, act in a way that brings kind of negative attention or reflects negatively on the family, they may experience stress around that or shame around that. If an eldest daughter fails to meet parental expectations or family expectations or even cultural expectations, they can feel a deep sense of shame, guilt, angst, and inadequacy, which can lead to diminished sense of worth, poor self-esteem, and even self-destructive behaviors. And then a lot of these experiences and the weight of maybe holding these roles and responsibilities can sometimes further develop into other mental health conditions like anxiety, depression, and even suicidal ideation.
Thank you so much, Dr. Spalding. So we're going to pause a little bit here. We're going to now be moving on to slides looking at what would be your role in the mental health space, human rights space, or really how you decide to come today or listen to the recording of this webinar of what would be some things to consider if you are working with eldest daughters in a mental health capacity. So I think we've talked a little bit about it, but not a lot. So I'm just going to walk through some of these points. Obviously, wherever you are situated in the world, there is probably also a context or within the diaspora of what that may look like for eldest daughters in other parts of the world. So from a developmental point of view, there are generational potential expectations or thoughts about what it means to be an eldest daughter, let alone what it means to have mental health needs. So for example, I'm Generation X. It's very different from Gen Z, like my children, and what it means, or even having conversations. Within a religious capacity, you might consider that there may be protective factors or risk factors in terms of how we may conceptualize through a religious or spiritual lens, how eldest daughters and their roles, and addressing mental health. That may include spiritual practices. As we also know, because I think many of us talk about this in our own communities, there is great stigma on mental health just in general, because, for example, in my lived experience and talking to people from other parts of the world, that if you can't see a wound, then how are we going to treat it? So a lot of people may go other ways of thinking about, okay, to address somebody or consider addressing eldest daughters and mental health. Well, maybe you should just, deal with it. You're the eldest, you have privileges, you have all of these things, but I also must confess that even talking about this right now, right? Even talking about this right now could be very atypical, because maybe we should be perceiving our role and our status as a privilege. As you can imagine, with all of our stories, and maybe even you thinking about your stories within the field of acculturation psychology, we are always adapting and changing to our environment and what those societal expectations are. So for example, I shared with you that I was moving all the time to all of these different places. And so my role still was of the eldest daughter, but I had to do things like translate what it means to go to school in a US public school versus a private school in London, or how to go to the grocery store and how to navigate how you actually put things on the conveyor belt and bag it yourself. All of these things then is different depending on the context with adaptation and change in the diaspora. I think this was also talked about in terms of the context of eldest daughters, that Western practice, what we believe as Western, which might be more towards Hofstede's individualism versus collectivism, that the individualism, like looking at just you, the self by yourself, it may not be a fit, especially for our lived experience as speakers in this presentation, because we look at ourselves in relationship with others. So, and it's not necessarily a dependence, it is an interdependence as we coin who we are over time. The other thing to consider is our own unconscious bias. So I was wondering if you were when you were looking at the maps of for Southeast Asia and East Asia, if you had any biases, and we all have them, of what these countries mean to you, or even your understanding of the countries, let alone who an eldest daughter is, or any mental health application or well-being. Need for action as a result of this webinar to consider, or if you even have a clientele that are of East Asian or Southeast Asian or really global, is more education and awareness. And last but not least, and of course there's more, this is just some of the things that we thought about, that we not only need to think about the eldest daughter within the context of their collective and their family, but also groups and the communities that they live in within the diaspora. So here are just some strategies, some things that we might think about when you actually apply. Building a social system is key. We do know the research that social support is really important, but who is part of that social support? I'm thinking, sorry, I'm an educator, Bronfenbrenner's ecological model, who is in that microsystem, and that context will be very, very important. And even asking your clients who, and your eldest daughter clients, who that might be, or even talking maybe informally to get that information. Very similarly, how to build those relationships. So again, I remember my students when they went to the Philippines, and we talked about high context versus low context communication. So what does that mean? High context is you're supposed to already know stuff. Like, for example, you are supposed to already know that there is a hierarchy in some of these Asian countries. You're supposed to already know how you're supposed to talk to people. You're supposed to already know, versus low context, which is very much supported in places like like America and Europe, United States of America and Europe, where what you say is what you mean. Also, too, the usage of mental health and psychology terminology rooted in the European traditions may not be appropriate. So words like, for example, consultation, let's work together, I want to hear your story. Sometimes food, going out to eat and maybe talking in maybe a group setting can be much more valuable than the traditional one-on-one sessions. This one is very huge, and this is not just specific to Southeast Asian or East Asian diaspora or people from those countries, is really the whole idea of saving face and shame. So anything that is perceived by the family or the individual as negative, like I'm going to say myself, I support mental health, but not everyone who is a service user or actually does this type of work can be seen as being supported from their family. Psychology, the field of psychology in some parts of the world and some parts of Asia is not considered something. It's not considered like something that's as important as business, medicine, the law, those type of things. So making sure that you understand that. So it's very brave and courageous if they do. Recognize, even though we may identify as someone from Southeast Asia, East Asia, or anywhere in the world, we can still be perceived as an outsider towards the insider. And last but not least, at least in this side, is acknowledging there are within and between group differences.
Wow. Thank you, Dr. Perez. And I'm going to invite everyone now to just take a stretch, whatever feels comfortable for you. If you would like to stretch your arms, maybe take a generous breath in. If you need to hug yourself, that's also okay right now, because we just shared so much information in this presentation so far. And we invite you to hold all of this, to continue marinating on it, because we are not done with this conversation. In fact, we're just getting started. And we have these two questions up here that we wanted to pose to you all, which is, what is your takeaway from our webinar for today? And where do you want to go with your takeaway? Again, you don't have to have the answer right now, but we invite you to journal, sleep on it, maybe eat around it if you would feel like that's comfortable for you, as we continue talking about the experiences of eldest daughters. And I invite Dr. Perez and Dr. Spalding if there's anything you would like to add to the slide before we jump to the resources. We're good? All right, we can go to the next slide.
Okay, so here are some of our resources. Again, Dr. Tafreshi and the special interest group, hopefully we can share the PDF of our slides, but we just want to walk very briefly about some of these. So that we do have the Asian American Psychological Association, and we have actually a specific division for the Filipinx American. Kasamahan is a Filipinx space for mental health professionals who identify within the Filipinx continuum. And then the other ones, I don't know, Dr. Spalding, did you want to talk about this, or Sandy? These three were here.
Yes, those are the links that I added for support geared towards the Asian Mental Health Collective. So when we do distribute this PDF, or if you're interested, you can click on these links to find some support, because as Dr. Perez mentioned earlier, when talking about the mental health context, eldest daughters do need a social support system, and these links are places where you can start.
Yes, even just for general knowledge for these populations, or even how people identify within these communities. And also too, I think all of these websites also are on social media, especially Instagram. Okay, and so these are our references based on our slides for more of the academic information that we have presented. So please take a look at those. There are some links here that go directly to the articles. All right, I'm going to pass it on now to Dr. Spalding, who will close for us.
Thank you, Dr. Perez and Sandy. We want to just thank all of you for being here with us today, for engaging in this really meaningful presentation. And this is our contact information. So if you have more questions or you want to engage in continued conversation, you can reach us here. We have our email included on here, as well as some social media connections there as well. And I think we are going to move to Q&A time.
Okay, thank you so much for this very wonderful, important, and meaningful presentation, and being so generous and sharing your life experiences with us. So let me see. Here we have. We have our members are saying thank you. Dean Moss is here. Thank you for joining today, saying thank you so much for this outstanding presentation. Seasia, this presentation was wonderful. We have Jizri saying thank you for the webinar. My Chido, thank you for this webinar. I have never felt so seen. Oh, that is so wonderful to hear this, and thank you for sharing your experience. One I see here, if anybody has a question, please either write it in the chat box or maybe raise your hand. There's one question. It's about, I actually had it myself. That's the only question I see for now here, is the power of guilt and shame and controlling and manipulating. And I think, as we're children and we don't know anything about life, it's like whatever they tell us we do, and how ingrained that is within us. And as we grow, we don't know that how deep we have internalized it until later. And even later, when we know, it's different knowing than, how to try to learn or embody or disembody that learning and internalize more functional, healthy ways of being. So any question or any actually ways that you can offer for our viewers to hear how they can actually turn this internalization and something to something that is more supportive of one's well-being.
I think one of the things that often comes up with that kind of power dynamic around guilt is the shame that comes up, because maybe you feel like you participated in a certain way, even though you didn't feel like you had power. I think one of the things to remember is that we have, as human beings, we have a very strong need for attachment. And so as children, we all want to be seen as good, and we all want to obey, because it is, whether consciously or subconsciously, a need to maintain that attachment with our caregivers. And so sometimes we're operating in ways that are rooted in our continual survival to maintain those attachments. So later on, when we become adults and we realize that we were stuck in those dynamics and we feel shame around those dynamics or guilt around those dynamics, I think it can be helpful to remember that those instincts to please and appease and obey are natural to us, because we still desire and we still need attachment for a lot of reasons, for survival reasons, but also I think we have a desire to be seen, loved, and cared for by our caregivers. And we also want to be connected and love our caregivers as well. So it can be a very complex dynamic, but I think that's one of the ways that we can heal, is remembering our humanity and how that can show up in our need for attachment as well.
Thank
Yeah,
you
I
so
wanted to,
much. Please go
oh,
ahead, Dr.
I'm just going to just add to what Dr. Spalding said, and I think many of you know I'm an attachment theorist, but I think that what Dr. Spalding was saying is it's almost like the dilemma between, again, the collective versus the individual. What we learn in school here is that it's about us, it's about me. But what we have to understand in these type of cultures and contexts, it's a we. It's not an I, it's a we. And so for some clinicians, they think that that's pathological, like you're not separating, you're like enmeshed, you have an enmeshed attachment, but you're not, we're not. We are always thinking, okay? We're always thinking. So in addition to wanting predictability, safety, consistency, and all that, we're also trying not only to be ourselves and detach, which is healthy development, but at the same time honor what is important to us. And sometimes we have not thought about us as an I, we've only thought about us as a we.
Thank you so much. And it's interesting just to add on from other psychologists, to make this full round, saying that sometimes when we have, you know, been doing things and our role was prescribed by the guilt and shame. And then once we know that it's about, okay, there's something we are asked to do, and they're giving us that guilt, and we have to kind of think about it, pause, think about it. Is this real guilt or dysfunctional guilt? What is the reason that I'm feeling this guilt? Is it the system, family system, giving me this guilt to be at the service of the other? Can the other actually provide what they're asking me for themselves? And which way is it affecting me? If I don't participate, are they going to be okay or harmed? Am I going to be okay or harmed? And from there, if the decision is really, I don't need to help, I shouldn't help because I need to really care for my well being because it's affecting me negatively, is we're still going to feel the guilt, but it's okay. Feeling the guilt and say, that's okay, and moving forward. And slowly that neuroplasticity comes in to find a way to move forward. And in specific, I think this is more difficult for people with high empathy. As the eldest daughters, they get trained for it, and that's why we have empathy. We say that, but we want to be able to be well, to be able to expand our compassion and empathy as long as we can, rather than getting burned out. So I don't know if any reflection you have on that, or
I think that was so helpful, Dr. DeFreschi, especially making the distinction around healthy guilt and dysfunctional guilt and giving yourself a moment to pause to ask that question and what it is in service of. So I think that's a wonderful practice, something that I encourage clients to do as well. But that's definitely a practical way that you can practice working through that guilt and healing that internalization.
okay, thank you. And Kendra is saying so true. The guilt of separating runs very deep. We have a question here. One participant is asking, what pressures do eldest daughters have in terms of performance, and how may they internalize them?
Well, I'm thinking about college. Uh, it was very important as a first gen here in the United States, meaning my parents went to college, but it was my very first, I was the first one, and all of my relatives on both sides of the family, and there's like 300 of them, for me to go to a US college. So everyone was looking at me. Okay. And I already knew my role, right? That is a lot of pressure to to be accepted to a university that gives honor to the family and whatever that acceptable university. So I was a piano performance major at Northwestern University, which passed the criteria that they were all very proud. So then what happened? It set up all of my other siblings. So I went to Northwestern, the next one went to Notre Dame, the next one went to Boston University, and then the last one went to Johns Hopkins. At the Johns Hopkins, my little brother's graduation, My dad brought all of us along. We followed him. He went to the president of Johns Hopkins. And what did he say to what did he say to the president of Johns Hopkins? He's like, hello, I want you to meet my eldest daughter, Trisha. If not for her, my son would not be here. So I thought he was going to introduce my brother, who was the graduate. Now, at the time, and I even remember this, at the time, I'm like, oh my gosh, what if I didn't go to a Northwestern? What if I went to some, I don't know, whatever their standard was. So yes, I mean, that's just one example of a pressure and how it's played out for the success of the family.
Thank you so much. We have Ni Young says, yes, I agree. Giving eldest daughters can give themselves grace to express all of the emotions, positive and negative. Thank you so much. Thank you for everybody's engagement here. Dr. Gulzar, any questions you have or any reflections you would like to add?
Oh, really, it's very interesting the discussion, and many thanks to Dr. Enza and Dr. Sandy and Dr. Patricia for giving these wonderful presentations on a very new topic to open our eyes to think about, and you have really make a good brainstorming for all of us who have been listening and who would listen later on in the video. You know, this is very interesting topic regarding the eldest daughter syndrome, perhaps we can say, which is commonly observed in the literature. But sometimes one can think also that what about the eldest son as well? Okay, so have you ever compared about it? So do they also go through such processes or stresses or strains and mental health issues like that, or too much expectation of the family as well? So after all, anyone would have been the eldest, maybe a son or the daughter. So they may be subjected to such a sort of things that you have mentioned. So this is something inevitable. Your birth is not in your control. You're born there. Okay. But the point again is that, you know, in this perspective of today, if you see the modern ages, you can say you are of the generation of the previous generations, uh, baby boomers like that. But you know, with the modern education, awareness, legal reforms, and cultural changes, social changes, and legal reforms and human rights issues and things going on, the family structure is also changing rapidly. Though it is slow to change, but it is unavoidable. We are immigrating from eastern to west and western to eastern. No, people are migrating or immigrating for various reasons. Okay, but when they are migrating, of course, not only migration, but the social media and the electronic media is also influencing each other. So this means that uh, our families are being influenced by each other or one another, you can say. So when we are being influenced by one another, so we cannot remain in isolation because our world is going to be globalized nowadays. So the roles, status and role, both are changing day by day. So what you say regarding the sort of collectivist culture and individualistic culture, or the reference to, you can say a lot about Hofstede classification of culture. You know, these changes are going to happen. Obviously, these are inevitable nowadays. So things are not like that now that we were 50 years or 100 years earlier. They are not now. We are living totally different perspective. You know? So I think a lot of research can be done on while thinking about, or you know, including these influencing variables or intervening variables are so many nowadays that while you're doing research in this area, so you can also see that how these influences are also making some changes in our family system, especially the status of status and role are changing. You know, In the previous days, Adolf Adler also gave uh, sort of classification or observations. You can read, he did a lot of research on the birth order in the family. Okay, and he mentioned this psychology of every child in the family, the eldest one and the middle and the last one, they have different psychological orientation because their status and role. So, but as we were mentioned that there are many stresses and strains and mental health issues, but there is also a positive point in that one. The eldest daughter or the eldest son, they have a leadership role as well. Okay, so they command the family or the younger ones. Sometimes younger children are crying, why we are younger? Oh, so every lot of pressures are always. All elder brothers and sisters are asking us to do this and this and this. No, so chores are more on the younger ones. So they also sometimes feel a lot of stresses. So the leader is the eldest daughter, leader is the eldest son, and they do develop significant maturity with the passage of time, and the parents also rely a lot on the eldest daughters and sons. So anyhow, the things are very beautiful to consider. I think the psychology, of course, the eldest daughters, as you say, you are in this topic, is might be somewhat more stressful as if your research is digging out like that. But if you are traveling from your Eastern culture, I mean the Southeast Asian or East Asian culture to Europe or American culture, so you are in a different frame of mind. Okay, their cultural values are totally different. Everybody, better than me, perhaps. So the things are, this is a complexity of this, organization of the family and the people nowadays. So where do we stand in a true perspective is very difficult to dig out that what is the actual role. Traditional roles are not no more there now. You know, uh, because everybody is claiming, no, I have this right, I have this right, and you have this obligation. And most of the people speak about the rights, their own rights. They don't speak about their obligations, isn't it? Generally, I see. So anyhow, this is very interesting topic. I think many theories, cultural and social theories, do come in this area, and the social changes that are rapidly going on from different cultures. But still, there is a variety of cultures, everywhere. Within, urban and rural are different, and the families are different. So things are like that. If you're collecting data on a particular area, that may be different. If you go to somewhat in a different area, you can get different observations. So, but anyhow, this is very interesting topic. This is you have put this idea into limelight, and you have stimulated so many things, so many ideas in my mind as well to think about and to say something. But maybe I wish I could write something over it. Uh, Anyhow, but this is your expertise, your area. Well done. I congratulate all of you to bring this topic in the limelight, and it is great awareness for all of us and great contribution. I feel obliged, and so many thanks to all of you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Gulzar. Thank you. I wanted also to mention two things, actually three things. I haven't heard something in the comment section. I will read that later. But one was, I'm so grateful, one of your first power presentation slides was showing you the United Nations Sustainable Developmental Goals. And thank you for, actually addressing three of them. Your presentation was supporting three of them. So thank you so much for that. And here, and the other one actually was from an international psychology point of view. We know that in order to address global issues like empowerment, equality, wellness, we cannot do it just from one scientific lens. We need multiple disciplines to come together and address it from, bottom, bottom, middle, out. And I'm so grateful that we have Sandy here with both of you one from Mind Body Medicine and also from international psychology and your other psychology backgrounds. And I hope in the future we can get people from other disciplines to come and join psychologists and the Division 52 to present. So thank you so much for creating this very creative presentation. So if everybody looks in the comment section, I put for you the Global Network of Psychologists for Human Rights. There are two links. One is for the website. And the mission of the Global Network for Psychologists is to promote a human rights-based and oriented psychology based on the values of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and other global human rights documents. And link to the About page, I have provided that for you also. And I want to also thank Dr. Mary Bullock for being here today and helping us with the Zoom presentation. Any other questions? Let me just check.
Dr.
Yes.
Mariam, let me say that Dr. Sandy and Dr. Dianza are also there. They have not joined our group as yet, but we will invite them to join our group as well, though Dr. Trish is already there with us. So even the participants who are there, they wish they can observe our website and they are welcome to join Division 52 and our group as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any other final thoughts our presenters have? Or okay, thank you so much for your presentation. Thank you for being here. Thank you everybody for joining us today. And I hope you enjoyed the presentation. And also, a recording of this webinar will be posted on the Division 52 website in a few days if you'd like to share it with your coworkers or other members of the family. Thank you so much and have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Salamat.